My name is Selena, I'm 69 years old, and my own son tried to have me declared mentally incompetent to steal my house. Before I tell you how his meticulously crafted plan backfired and ended with a lawyer at my door serving him papers in my own living room, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It helps to know who I'm talking to. It all began, as the most painful things often do, with an act of love. Or what I thought was love. 5 years ago, on Christmas Eve, I spent 2 full days on my feet, my hands aching and stained with chili powder, my back screaming in protest. I was making tamales. Not just any tamales, but the kind my son, Ronan, had loved as a boy. The kind his father, my dear Elias, used to say could solve any problem. Elias was the love of my life. We had simple dreams, a small, paid-off house, a garden, watching our son grow into a good man. We never got there. A heart attack, sudden and brutal, stole him from us when Ronan was just 12 years old. In an instant, our world shattered. Our dreams were replaced by the harsh reality of survival. It was just me and my boy against the world. I took on any job I could find. I scrubbed floors as a housekeeper in homes I could never afford. I worked grueling hours as a caregiver, tending to the needs of strangers, pouring all my energy into them. Every dollar I earned, every ounce of strength I had, was for Ronan. I wanted him to have the life Elias and I had dreamed of for him. I remember coming home late one night, the smell of bleach clinging to my clothes, my hands raw and red from cleaning chemicals. Ronan was about 16, studying at the kitchen table. He looked up, and for a second, I saw a flash of concern in his eyes. "You look tired, Mom." I just smiled, my heart swelling. "It's worth it," I told him, pointing to his textbooks. "This is your ticket out. Your ticket up." I poured every spare cent into his college fund. I didn't just want him to succeed, I needed him to. His success would be the validation of my entire life sacrifice. And he did succeed. He got a degree, then a high-powered job in finance. He married Cambria, a woman who looked as if she'd been sculpted from ice. She was beautiful, polished, and carried an air of effortless superiority. They bought a massive house in a gated community, the kind of place that had a name instead of a street number. The distance between my tiny rented apartment and their marble-floored mansion grew wider with each passing year, becoming a silent, gaping canyon between us. That Christmas Eve, I was determined to bridge that canyon. I loaded the heavy, steaming pot of tamales into my old car, the rich aroma filling the space. It was more than just food, it was a memory, a symbol of our shared past, a peace offering from my world to his. When I arrived, the house was aglow with what looked like 1,000 tiny lights. Inside, a Christmas tree soared towards the 2-story ceiling, laden with glistening ornaments. Ronan gave me a distracted peck on the cheek, his eyes already back on his phone. "Hey, Mom. Merry Christmas." Cambria glided towards me, her silk dress shimmering. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She eyed the foil-covered pot I was holding as if it were a strange, unidentifiable object. "Selena. What have you brought?" "Tamales," I said, my voice full of a hope that, in hindsight, was painfully naive. "Ronan, they're your favorites. Pork with red chili, just like you like them." Ronan finally looked up, a slow, condescending smile spreading across his face. He exchanged a look with Cambria, a silent communication that I was not privy to. "Oh. That's sweet of you, Mom." He turned to his wife, his voice loud enough for the whole, echoing room to hear. "It's rent food, honey. You know. It's what poor people eat." The word struck me with physical force. Rent food. It was a label, a judgment, a dismissal of my entire life. Cambria let out a delicate, tinkling laugh. It wasn't a cruel laugh, it was something far worse. It was the laugh of someone observing a curious, pathetic creature. It was pure, unadulterated pity. In that moment, I wasn't his mother. I was a novelty item, a relic from a past he was desperate to shed. My face burned with shame. I tried to salvage the moment, to reclaim a shred of dignity. I looked around their perfect, impersonal living room. "Your home is just beautiful," I said, my voice strained. "You know, I've always dreamed of having a little place of my own someday. Nothing fancy. Just a small house with a garden." Ronan snorted, a sharp, ugly sound of derision. "Get real, Mom," he said, shaking his head as if I were a child babbling about fantasies. He turned his back on me and walked away, already absorbed in a conversation with one of their wealthy friends. The rest of the evening is a blur of humiliation. I sat alone on a pristine white sofa that was probably worth more than my car, watching them unwrap gifts that cost more than my entire monthly salary. My tamales, my 2 days of labor, my offering of love, sat on the kitchen counter, growing cold and forgotten. I drove home later that night, the pot heavy on the seat beside me. I pulled over on the side of the highway, the blur of headlights passing me by, and I wept. I cried for my aching hands, for my foolish heart, and for the devastating realization that the son I had given everything to was utterly and completely ashamed of me. He wasn't just ashamed of my food, he was ashamed of my work, my poverty, my dreams. That night, under the cold glow of a street lamp, a seed was planted in the barren soil of my heart. It was a hard, bitter seed of determination. Ronan wanted me to get real? Fine. That's exactly what I would do. For the next 4 years, my life became an exercise in quiet rebellion. My mission had a name, the Garden Fund. I found a full-time position as a caregiver for Mr. Thomas Redmond, a kind, elderly man with sparkling eyes and a gentle soul. He was a widower, and we found a quiet comfort in each other's company. He would tell me stories of his late wife, and I would tell him about Elias. Unlike my son, Mr. Redmond saw me. He saw my worth beyond my uniform. He'd often insist I sit with him for tea, asking about my day, listening with genuine interest. He once noticed my shoes were worn through at the soles and gave me a $100 bill, calling it a dignity bonus. "A woman who works as hard as you deserves to walk comfortably," he'd said. His kindness was a soothing balm on the wound my own child had inflicted. He paid me a fair salary, and I saved every penny. On weekends, my tiny apartment kitchen transformed into a small factory. I made hundreds of tamales and sold them at the flea market. The rhythm of spreading the masa, filling the corn husks, and tying them shut became a form of meditation. Each tamale sold was another brick in the foundation of my future home. I lived like a monk. No new clothes, no movies, no small luxuries. Every time a wave of loneliness hit me, I would conjure the image of Ronan's smug face and Cambria's condescending laugh, and it would fuel my resolve. My dream was no longer a fluffy fantasy, it was a concrete, achievable goal. Then, Mr. Redmond passed away in his sleep. His funeral was a somber affair. I stood at the back, invisible, just another one of the service people. I expected nothing, I had been paid for my work. But a week later, an official-looking envelope arrived. It was from his estate lawyer, his son, Darius Redmond. I'd only met Darius a handful of times when he'd visited his father. He was a serious, impeccably dressed man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. Inside the envelope was a check and a handwritten note on thick, creamy paper. "Dear Selena," it read. "My father spoke of you often. He didn't consider you his caregiver, he considered you his friend. He told me you were one of the most dignified people he had ever met. Please accept this inheritance bonus as a small token of our family's immense gratitude for the peace and comfort you brought him in his final years." I unfolded the check. The number written on it made the world go fuzzy. It wasn't a king's ransom, but combined with 4 years of my tamale money, my relentless saving, it was enough. It was more than enough. I slid down the wall of my small apartment and cried until I had no tears left. They were tears for the kindness of a near stranger, tears for my own bone-deep exhaustion, and tears of pure, triumphant joy. I had done it. My dream was real. 2 months later, I stood in the empty living room of a small, sun-drenched villa. It wasn't in a gated community, but it had high ceilings, big windows, and a small, gloriously overgrown garden in the back. I walked from room to room, the sound of my own footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. This was mine. All mine. I hadn't told Ronan. What was there to say? The last time we'd spoken was months ago when I'd refused to loan him $5,000 for a down payment on a new sports car. The first few weeks were a blissful blur. I painted the walls a cheerful buttery yellow. I spent hours in the garden, pulling weeds until my muscles screamed, my hands covered in the rich, dark soil. I bought a comfortable, floral print armchair and placed it by the living room window, a perfect spot to read and watch the birds. For the first time in decades, I felt a sense of profound peace. I finally felt safe. That feeling, of course, was an illusion. The real storm was gathering just over the horizon, and I was about to walk right into the eye of it. One Saturday afternoon, a sleek, black SUV pulled into my driveway. I recognized it instantly. My heart lurched. It was Ronan and Cambria. They emerged from the car, their expensive sunglasses hiding their eyes, and surveyed my modest home as if it were a curious insect. They hadn't called. They weren't invited. An icy dread began to snake its way around my heart. I opened the door before they had a chance to knock. Ronan. Cambria. What a surprise. Mom, Ronan said, brushing past me as if he owned the place. So this is it. It's quaint. His tone made the word sound like an insult. Cambria followed, her gaze sweeping across my treasured space, cataloging every perceived flaw. The appliances are a bit dated, she remarked, running a manicured finger over my perfectly functional stove. We'll have to upgrade all of this. They didn't ask for a tour, they simply took one, walking through my home with an air of entitlement that made my skin crawl. Ronan peered into the second bedroom. And this room is small, but I suppose it will do for a nursery. I stood frozen in my own hallway, the words hanging in the air. We'll have to upgrade. Nursery. A cold knot of confusion and fear tightened in my stomach. I'm sorry, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I don't understand. They exchanged a look of practiced patience, the kind one gives to a particularly slow child. They guided me into my own living room and sat me down in my floral armchair. Then, with the calm demeanor of corporate raiders executing a hostile takeover, they laid out their vision for my future. They had found a wonderful senior living community for me. They had glossy brochures filled with smiling, silver-haired seniors playing shuffleboard. They explained, in condescendingly simple terms, that it was irresponsible for a woman my age to live alone. This house, my house, was a perfect starter home for their new family. They actually expected me to be grateful. They presented a sheaf of papers, ready for my signature, that would transfer the deed of my house to them. This is perfect, Mom, Ronan said, his voice oozing with a concern that was utterly false. My wife will love living here. You'll be safer, and we'll be secure. It's a win-win. I looked at my son's face, the face I had once kissed and wiped away tears from, and I saw a complete stranger. The contempt from that Christmas Eve was still there, but now it was wrapped in a suffocating blanket of greed. They weren't just trying to take my house, they were trying to take my life, my independence, my very identity. My voice, when it came, was surprisingly steady. I need to think about it. They left, smug and confident, the brochure sitting on my coffee table like a ticking time bomb. For 3 days, I was paralyzed. The house, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a prison. Ronan began his campaign of psychological warfare. The texts were relentless. Mom, we're just worried about you. It's a big house to manage alone. The community has a fantastic social calendar. You wouldn't be lonely anymore. Think of your future grandchildren, Mom. This is your chance to provide them with a stable home. Each message was a masterful blend of feigned concern and emotional blackmail. I stopped answering his calls, which only led to cloying voicemails from Cambria. "Selena, we're just trying to do what's best for everyone. Please don't be difficult." I started to unravel. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, their words echoing in my head. Was I being selfish? Was this what motherhood was, an endless cycle of sacrifice until there was nothing left of you? I looked at old photos of Ronan as a little boy, his gap-toothed smile beaming at the camera, and I felt a wave of profound grief. Where had that boy gone? On the third night, I reached my breaking point. I was sitting in the dark, the brochures staring up at me, when my phone buzzed with a final, chilling text from Ronan. "If you won't do this for us voluntarily, Mom, we'll have to explore other options. It's for your own good." A threat. Cold, unambiguous, and terrifying. That was it. The grief and confusion inside me flash froze, then shattered, replaced by a glacial rage. For my own good. The sheer, unmitigated arrogance of it was a slap in the face. I stood up, a fire igniting in my belly. I would not be erased. But how could I fight them? They had money, power, and a complete lack of conscience. I was just a retired caregiver with a small house. In a fit of desperate energy, I started rummaging through an old box of paperwork, not even sure what I was looking for. Pay stubs, old bills, memories. And then, my fingers brushed against a piece of thick cardstock. I pulled it out. Darius Redmond, attorney at law. Mr. Redmond's son. I remembered his father pressing it into my hand years ago. "If you ever need anything, Selena, you call him." A kind gesture then, a lifeline now. My hand was shaking so violently I could barely dial the number. It was late, but I found a 24-hour line for his firm. I left a halting, whispered message. "My name is Selena Duarte. I was your father's caregiver. I'm in trouble. My son, he's trying to take my house." I hung up, my hope dwindling. It was a Hail Mary pass in the final second of the game. The next morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. My heart leaped into my throat. "Hello? Mrs. Duarte? This is Darius Redmond. I received your message." His voice was calm, professional, but held the same undertone of decency I remembered from his father. The relief was so overwhelming that I burst into tears, the story of the last few years, the last few days, pouring out of me in a torrent of pain and fear. He listened, his silence a comforting presence on the other end of the line. When I finally ran out of words, he paused for a long moment. "Selena," he said, his voice gentle. "I am so incredibly sorry you are going through this. But I have to tell you something. This isn't a new idea for him." What do you mean?" "Ronan contacted my firm a few weeks ago," Darius said, his voice turning grim. "He was referred by a colleague, he had no idea of my connection to you. He was making inquiries. He wanted to know the legal requirements for gaining power of attorney over a parent's assets due to cognitive decline. He asked what evidence was needed to have a parent declared mentally incapacitated." The floor dropped out from under me. It was a physical sensation, a lurch in my gut that left me breathless. This wasn't a sudden, greedy impulse. This was a cold, calculated, premeditated plot. He had been laying the groundwork to have me legally erased for weeks. For a moment, I wanted to curl up and disappear. He was my son. My baby. How could he be capable of such a monstrous betrayal? But Darius's voice sliced through the fog. "Selena, what he is doing is not just despicable, it is illegal. It's called attempted financial exploitation of the elderly, and we are going to fight it. But I need you to be strong. Can you do that?" I thought of the tamales. I thought of the phrase rent food. I thought of the hard, calloused hands that had worked to give him everything. The seed of determination, planted in humiliation and watered with tears, finally broke through the surface. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and hard as steel. "Tell me what we need to do." That afternoon, Darius came to my house. He laid out a plan of counterattack that was both brilliant and terrifying. First, he scheduled an immediate, thorough evaluation with a top geriatric specialist. "We need an ironclad, medically certified document stating that you are of perfectly sound mind," he explained. Second, he handed me a small, innocuous-looking pen. "This is a high-quality digital recorder. The next time they come, and they will come, I want this running. Let them talk, Selena. Let them hang themselves with their own words." We role-played the potential conversation. He taught me to ask open-ended questions, to feign confusion, to draw out their true intentions. "You are not the weak woman he thinks you are," Darius insisted. "You are a survivor. It's time to show him." The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. I went to the doctor and underwent a battery of tests. The final report was unequivocal: I was in excellent mental and physical health for my age. Darius drafted the legal documents, a formal cease and desist letter coupled with a notice of intent to sue for elder abuse and emotional distress. I practiced using the recorder until my fingers were nimble and my nerves were steady. My little villa, my sanctuary, was now a battleground. I was ready. Then, they came. This time, they brought my grandchildren, a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. It was a sickeningly strategic move, using their innocence as a weapon. They arrived bearing smiles and bags of groceries, a picture of the perfect, caring family. "We brought dinner," Cambria announced brightly. "Go give Grandma a big hug," Ronan instructed the children. I hugged them tightly, their small, warm bodies a painful reminder of what was at stake. We all sat in the living room. I casually placed the pen in a mug on the coffee table, its tiny lens aimed directly at the sofa where Ronan and Cambria sat. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my breathing was even. The performance began. They talked about how wonderful it would be for the kids to have a yard. They painted a vivid picture of their idyllic future in my home. Then Ronan leaned forward, his expression a mask of solemn concern. "Mom, we have the papers here," he said softly, pulling a folder from his expensive leather briefcase. "It's all very standard. Just a formality to transfer the title. We can get it done quickly, and then we can all move on to a better, more secure future." I let the silence hang in the air, a heavy blanket. I let his confidence swell. I looked at my son, this handsome stranger, and I felt a strange sense of detachment. "You know, Ronan," I began slowly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About my future. And I agree that I should have a solid plan." His face lit up with a smug, triumphant smile. "I knew you'd see it our way, Mom. So I sought some professional advice," I continued, my eyes locked on his. "I spoke to a lawyer." The smile evaporated. Cambria's body went rigid. "A lawyer?" Ronan repeated, his voice sharp with suspicion. "Why on earth would you do that?" "Just to make sure I was doing the right thing, that all my affairs were in order," I said, my voice placid. "And he was very thorough. Very helpful." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Ronan and Cambria stared at the door, then at me, naked confusion warring with rising panic on their faces. I didn't move. A moment later, we heard a key in the lock. The door swung open, and Darius Redmond stepped inside. He was immaculate in a dark gray suit, his expression neutral. He nodded once to me. "Selena." Then he turned his cool, assessing gaze on my son. "Ronan. Cambria. I wasn't aware there was a family meeting today." Ronan shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "Who the hell are you? This is a private family matter." Actually, Darius said, stepping fully into the room and closing the door behind him, it stopped being a private family matter when you consulted my firm about your mother's legal competency. I'm Darius Redmond, Mrs. Dwart's legal counsel. He placed his briefcase on a chair and opened it with 2 sharp clicks. Selena, is the device active? I simply nodded, my gaze fixed on my son's face. The blood drained from it, leaving behind a pasty, gray pallor. Cambria looked like she was about to faint. What device? What are you talking about? Ronan stammered. The digital recorder that has captured this entire conversation, Darius stated flatly. The one that recorded you attempting to coerce your mother into signing away her property under duress. He pulled out a thick file. This is a certified medical report from Dr. Alistair Finch, confirming your mother's complete mental and physical competence. And this, he said, pulling out a sheaf of papers and placing them firmly on the coffee table, is a formal notice. We have a meticulously documented case against you for attempted financial exploitation and felony elder abuse. My client also has records of your previous inquiries, which establishes a clear and disturbing pattern of intent. The papers landed next to the glossy brochures with a sound like a gavel. You have 2 options, Darius said, his voice like ice. Option 1, we file this with the court tomorrow morning. It becomes a matter of public record. The scandal will almost certainly impact your career, your finances, your social standing, and any future legal proceedings, such as a divorce or custody battle. Option 2, you accept a deal. You will sign this legally binding agreement, forfeiting any and all future claims to your mother's estate and ceasing all contact unless she initiates it. Furthermore, you will complete 200 hours of community service at the Northgate Senior Care Center. You have 5 minutes to decide. Ronan stood there, utterly broken, his mouth opening and closing silently. Cambria, however, reacted with venom. Her face contorted into a mask of pure rage. She grabbed her purse, snatched the hands of my terrified grandchildren, and stormed out of the house without a single word, slamming the door behind her. Ronan sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. Why? He whispered. Why would you do this to me? I looked at him, not with hatred, but with a deep, weary sadness for the boy he used to be and the man he had become. I walked over and picked up the pen from the coffee table. You have it backward, Ronan, I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of all my years of sacrifice. The question is, and always has been, why would you do this to me? My dignity was never for sale. Now get out of my house. He flinched, then slowly rose to his feet and shuffled out the door like an old man. I watched his SUV peel out of my driveway, and as the dust settled, the strength that had held me upright for days finally dissolved. I collapsed into my floral armchair, the silent, empty house my witness, and I wept. But for the first time in a long time, they were tears of liberation. The war was over. And I had won. In the 6 months since that day, a quiet, sturdy peace has taken root in my life. Ronan, I learned through the grapevine, took the deal. His high-flying life came crashing down. Cambria filed for divorce almost immediately, citing irreconcilable differences, which I suppose is one way of saying she didn't sign up to be married to a man scrubbing floors at a nursing home. They are now embroiled in a bitter custody battle over the children. I ache for my grandchildren, but they are collateral damage in a war of greed they didn't start. My house, my villa, has transformed. It is no longer just a house, it is a home, a sanctuary. My garden is my pride and joy, bursting with tomatoes, zucchini, and herbs. And something wonderful and unexpected has happened. My story, in the quiet way these things do, got around. Other women my age with similar stories, started to appear at my doorstep. Carol, whose son was trying to get his hands on her inheritance to pay off his business debts. Maria, whose daughter kept borrowing from her retirement fund. We formed a little group. We meet every Thursday in my garden. We drink tea, we eat cake, and we share our stories. We give each other advice, strength, and a safe place to be heard. I call us the Tamale Club. We are a small, fierce army of grandmothers who have decided, together, that we will not be pushed aside. We will not be invisible. Last week, Darius came over with the final papers for my will. He has become a dear friend, the son I never had. We sat at my kitchen table, and I signed the document that ensures my house, upon my passing, will be turned over to a new foundation, the Redmond Ward House, a secure and welcoming home for elderly women who find themselves with nowhere safe to go. Signing my name felt like planting the most important seed of all. Yesterday, a small, handmade card arrived in the mail. It was from my grandchildren. In a child's wobbly handwriting, it read, "We miss you, Grandma. We hope we can come see your garden when we're older." I read the words, and a single tear traced a path through the faint wrinkles on my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear for all that was lost, and for all that had been found. I folded the card carefully and placed it inside my old metal recipe box, right next to the worn, stained card with my mother's recipe for tamales. It's a reminder that while some doors must be locked and bolted forever, perhaps, far in the future, a small window might be eased open. But this time, I will be the one who holds the key. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was hard to tell, but I know I'm not the only one who has gone through something like this. My question for you today is, have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to protect your own peace and dignity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more. It really does help more than you know.